If you want the content on your website to get noticed by large language models, you need to understand metadata relevance. We're talking about your title tag, your meta description, and your URL structure. If you know anything about SEO, you're probably thinking, TJ, I already know about this. But it's actually a little different with large language models. In traditional search engines, your title tag and URL slug play a big part in your rankings. And this is still the case in large language models, which also use index-based ranking to retrieve relevant pages. However, large language models then take an additional step before deciding if they're going to retrieve content from the page. They first use a web tool, which returns a set of results, which each include a title, URL, and meta description. And that's all the information they have to decide if they want to retrieve the content on the page. The LLM is essentially taking on the role that a human would in a traditional Google search. When you perform a search in Google, you're presented with a set of titles, URLs, and meta descriptions. You then review those and decide which pages you want to visit. But of course, large language models don't think the same way that humans do, and they will typically retrieve many pages. So how do you optimize your title tag, URL, and meta description to maximize your chance of being retrieved by large language models? The first step is to consider what the large language model is likely searching for. And that search will be based on whatever the user entered as a prompt. So a user goes to a large language model, asks a question, and then that large language model will take that question and break it into a series of searches. So the best way to determine what the large language model is searching for is to use a tool like Profound or Peak to simulate these prompts and track the searches that the large language model performs as a result. If you don't have that data, you can essentially just guess what a person might search if they were looking for the content on that page. Just keep in mind that large language models do search differently than humans. They typically perform much longer, more specific searches, and they often append things like the demographic or location of the user, a specific use case, or the current year. Once you have a specific search term you want to optimize for, you just want to include that search term in the title and URL of the page. For the meta description, my recommendation is to spoil the answer. Think of the question the user was most likely asking in the initial prompt, and then do your best to provide a concise answer to that question as the meta description. This is the best way to make the large language model confident that the content on the page will answer the question. This was the number 3 AI visibility factor from Kevin Indig's Growth Memo newsletter. We have 8 more to go.